Hello and welcome back. We are continuing our series of tutorials about MySQL, MariaDB, really trying to keep it general SQL. But, sometimes we do manage to sort of split into a couple of things that are more or less specific to MySQL and MariaDB, particularly if you're using a higher end, more like, super full featured situation like a Oracle or SQL Server, where they do have their own extensions. But we're going to try to keep it as useful as possible. And continuing this episode, where we're going to look into, dig into some query type stuff this time. So we're going to talk about where clauses. And I think we're going to let's start with our basic stuff. So when if you go back to our tutorial parent, if we select everything from there, we have 4 rows. And what we've seen before, for the most part, is a select, although we've used inner joins and outer joins, but we're now going to talk about within our query. And we'll start with something simple. So we're going to start about a single table. Now in this one, let's say that we only want everybody that has a creation date. Let's start with this. Only one has a T1 ID of 3. Now there's a couple ways we go about it, but with the where clause, the easiest way is we're going to say select star from tutorial parent where, and then we just give it the column name. So we say T1 ID, and then we say equals 3. So everywhere it equals 3, give me the records. Bam, we have our 2 records. Now, we can also do greater than. So I could say where it is, let's say less than 4. Now Notice we get 3 records back because null is not less than 4. Is it greater than 0? Let's find out. Nope, it is also not greater than 0. So it's important to note here that because we're using greater than or less than on the this integer value, it doesn't know where to sort or where to put as far as greater than or less than a null. So it just ignores it. It's like, nope, I'm not even going to think about that row. But note here that if I do where T1 ID is less than 4, it's going to give me all of these. If I just do if it's less than 3, then it's just going to give me the only one where the ID is less than. Now I can also do, if I go back to my equals, I can do a not equals. And this is, again, note that even though I do not equals, null is not, which makes it double negative, is not equal to 3. Now I could say, what if I say if it's not equal to null? Then I get nothing because, I get nothing because this is a numeric representation. This is a numeric not equal. When I want to deal with null, I would have to say it either is or it is not. So if I say everywhere where it is null, then I get my record. If I say everywhere where it is not null, then I'm going to get all of these other records. So I'm able to do a lot of your basic stuff that you would think of. If you do greater than, less than, nulls are either going to be they are. It's either they is or they is not. So it either they are or they are not. And you can also do, let's see, what else did we want to make sure I get what we want to? Null, not null, equal, greater than, less than, not equal. Now what we can also do with our query, let's go back to, we'll keep it simple. So if we go back to select star, one of the things we can do is we can actually order the results. Like here, the parent, it looks like it's sort of in like a natural order of where the record is, but that's actually not guaranteed. What I could do is I could say, let me start with the lowest to the highest of the ordered IDs. And that is called order by. So, and that's after the where clause if you have one. So it's basically one of the last things you do is you say order by, and then I give it the column name. So I'm going to order by T1 ID. And when I do that, now here, null comes first. it takes the nulls first, and then it does them in order for T1 ID. And that's going to be, and there's two different ways you can do it. You can do ascending, which is ASC, and that's what is by default. Or I can go in descending order. And now the 3s are at the top, the 1, and then the nulls at the bottom. So note that when you're doing, although lesser than and greater than does not, with a number, take into account null. When you do an order by, null is less than any number. So if I had some, I could play around with the numbers and put like a negative in there or something like that, and null is still going to be there. Now, I can also do, now some of these are going to be pretty straightforward, because if I do order by user login, like a string, then you can see that it's ordered in that fashion. Luckily, or unfortunately, maybe in my case, since I have these in different ways, I have the names ordering the same as IDs. That could be a problem, but let's look at tutorial 1. Whoops. And play around with that a little bit, because I think that one's different. Yeah. So here you can see by default it goes by T1 ID. If I want to go by state, then I'm going to see S234. I can order by zip. That's going to be the same order. Shoot, I did the same thing in both of those. But note that now I have completely nothing to do with the T1 ID column, because that's in a completely reverse order. So I can do an order by. I can also do a thing called a group by. And so when I go back to parent, then I can come in and I can do group by start year. And now what it does is these are sort of like roll-ups. It's just going to grab a record, because we only have 2 start years. We have 2022, and then we have nulls for these 2. And so it's only showing me groupings for these. And the rest of the data sort of doesn't seem to matter very much. But that's because I'm not doing grouping functions. So in order to look at those, let's play around a little bit. We're going to create yet another table. And this one we're going to call stats. And all it's got is an ID, and then, there we go, an ID, a code, and then 2 integer values. And then what I want to do is I'm going to take, just going to go ahead and insert it. Whoop, what was my code? Code was for, oops. Let me do this. I didn't do that right. So let me take these 3. There we go. Okay, so now if I do select star from stats, I'm going to see a lot of stats. So I've got 8 rows. Now, if I want to do a, and of course I didn't, probably didn't do this right for my total group bys. I can, let's do this. I'm going to change these real quick. So I'm going to delete from stat, actually let's truncate stats. So I'm going to empty the table. And instead, I'm going to come in and I'm going to change these first values. So it's going to be 1, 2, 1, 2. Let's do 3 and 3. Okay. So now let's take that and insert those, because I needed some repeating values, which I do. I have. So now if I do select star from stats. Okay. So I can see, and let's do order by value 1, just so it's easy to see that. Order by value 1. So I can see I've got 3 that have the same value 1, 2, or 3s with a 2, and 2 with 3. Now if I do group by, And actually order by is the last thing, so I'm going to keep it that way, but I'm going to add my group by value 1. And so I still see it in order, but now it's just taking the first record it finds, as you can see, for each of the values. Now I can actually do something interesting with that. So instead of just doing the normal star, I'm going to select code, because remember, we can tell it which columns we want. So let's go ahead and do these columns. So I've dropped my ID out. Now what I want to do is, instead of showing that value, I'm going to do a sum of the values of value 2. And so here I should see 95 plus 295 plus 495, or for the 2s I should see 1, 3, and 595 added, and then here I'll see 6 plus 7. If we do that, now we can see that I've got these totals, and so now I'm actually generating, in my query, I'm generating totals of like values. The same thing is, I can, instead of a sum, I can do a max, and now it shows me the maximum value for each of these. I can do a min and show the minimum value. Let me take this and copy this over, just make sure it's in the notes. And yeah, that'll work. And so min, we can see that it's the minimum, the 95, well, where'd that go? 95, 195, 695. And now we can also do, let's go back to our wheres, because that gives us some basics for doing some group bys and order by. Now we can group across multiple fields, but we're not going to get into that yet. What I do want to do is I'm going to go back to, I'm just going to do select star from stats. And now I'm going to do where, because there's another thing that I think is very useful for us to get. I'm going to do where code, let's say where code equals A. So if we do that, we get that 1 value back. If we do ABC, we get the ABC record. Now, we can do a list of values. So we could say where code in, and then give it parentheses and give it the list of values. So if I do in A and in ABC, which is these two, where it's in A and also ABC, then we can see those two records. So let me make sure I capture that for our notes. And then we can also do a like. So now I can say where code like. Now, if I want to do where code like A, it's only going to give me an A, because it says like is in, there's not really any ambiguity. It's going to be the same as an equal. But let's say I put a %, which is a wildcard, after the A. This says, give me everything where it starts with A. Now I get all these records. So let me go look at the E. I don't think we started with an E anywhere. We did not start with an E anywhere, but we do see an E sort of floating around. So here, nothing starts with an E. But we can put a % before that and say, is there anything that ends with an E? Yes, as a matter of fact, there is. Now, the other thing is we can say, give me a record where E exists anywhere in the code. And now I get it, whether it's at the end, the middle, or there. Now I can do some other stuff, because I could say, let's see, I can do multiple strings here. So I could say, let's say it has to have B and E next to each other. B first, followed by E. There is that case. I can reverse it and say EB. But now I can't put a % between those and get both, because it's still going to precede the E from the B. So we can place that wildcard wherever within our string that we're looking for. Now note that this is not a number. So if we wanted to do value 2, like, let's say 7%. Say it starts with the 7. Oh, I lied. It is going to allow that. So I can do that within my numbers. So even though these are, and those are integers, but we are okay with that. So we can find some things that are, so basically let's go back to look at like our, let's go look at our data here. And let's see if we can find something we want. So let's say we want to look for a zip code. Now granted that's strings, but still, so you could also look for any zip code that, well, we sort of played around with that, so I guess that's not as good. Let's see if we get something different here. We may revisit this just to get some funky data. Oh, let's try this. Let's play around with it with select star from where, let's see, are those, yeah, so update, date, like, let's take a look at this one. %09. And we're going to see that we've got that date. So we could also do it like for every date, 0409. Or if we wanted to start it, then we could go 2022 dash, there we go. And that's going to give us all of those dates. So we can play around with this quite a bit as far as a like. It gives us just a yet another and also a very powerful way to do our searches or our where clauses. The warning I would say about a like as opposed to just about every other way to grab data is that it's not as index friendly. So if you're building big complex queries, you're taking a lot of data back, then, or I guess it's more like if you're searching through a table with a lot of data, then it can take longer to do the like quite a bit sometimes than to do a greater or a less than. And we'll talk more about indexes as we go further into this this discussion. But I think that's probably a pretty good place for now for us to wrap this one up. So we've played around quite a bit now with some very basic queries. We've built some tables. We've got some relationships. And we're just keeping on in the next episode around. So hope you go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time.